Hey, good morning, folks. We're just about ready to get this webinar on the go. I'm just waiting for any kind of last minute people to join us. Give us kind of a couple of minutes to allow anybody else to join, and then we'll get properly started. Okay, I think that's kind of long enough to let any stragglers join, I think we'll get started then. So I'm Aaron. I'm one of the developer advocates here at Nexmo. Um, this is me. I've been a kind of developer for about the last kind of 15 years. I'm a frequent conference speaker. Been developer advocate with Nexmo now for about 6 months, I think. Um, so yeah, what we're going to talk about today then is kind of sentiment analysis of voice calls, so inbound calls. And what I mean by that is assuming you have a customer service or some other kind of inbound channel where you have customers calling you and you want to assess kind of what they're feeling, whether they're angry or they're sad or they're frustrated or hopefully happy or even joyful. And then that information would be really handy to have while you're actually on the call, so you can tell straight away kind of how the call is going, maybe modify kind of your approach and things depending upon how the user is feeling. Or even if you have kind of call center managers, you might be able to flag up to them kind of in real time, calls that aren't going very well, so they can maybe interject or try and save that piece of contact before the opportunity passes. So in order to do this, we're going to use a couple of things. We're obviously going to use Nexmo's voice APIs. So one of the kind of unique things about Nexmo is as well, be able to connect kind of a call to a call. So the usual kind of voice proxy, where a number that you dial a virtual number and it forwards you on to either another number or a set endpoint or something like that. What we have, which I think is fairly unique, is we can actually connect that voice call to a WebSocket. Now, because we have the ability to connect to a WebSocket, we can then start to send that data to some really interesting places, including IBM Watson. So for anybody who's not familiar, IBM Watson is a range of kind of products and services offered by IBM. The two we're going to be looking at today is the speech to text. So we're going to be piping in our data via this WebSocket into their WebSocket API. It's going to take the audio from our voice call and it's going to convert it into a transcript, into written text. We're then going to take that written text and we're going to pass it into another one of their products, which is this. Oh, actually, I just got my back button, which is the Tone Analyzer. So the Tone Analyzer will take the text that we supply and it'll give us back a score for different emotions. So it covers things like anger, frustration, disgust, sadness, fear, and joy. So that we'll get kind of a score back for the text we supply based upon those kind of emotions. Now we're actually going to be doing it in real time. So because we've got the WebSocket coming in with our audio, and we're going to be using Watson's speech-to-text WebSocket API as well, we'll be getting results back from that fairly frequently, and then we'll be able to send those straight off the Tone Analyzer. Now, once we receive the information back from the Tone Analyzer, we can then show that to our call center agent. So kind of like, if we want to kind of sketch it out, so if we imagine that we have, we've got our kind of user who's initiating the call, and they're going to be phoning a long virtual number. So whenever they call this long virtual number, what we're actually going to do then is, let's just make this, sorry, we're not going to get very far if we've got such a thick marker. So we've got our user, and they're phoning our long virtual number. That whenever they call that LVN, what we're actually going to do is we're going to create a conference. So we've got multiple people who are going to be joining this. Now, I know I said it's like between the user and a call center agent, so why do we need to create a conference? Well, what we're actually going to do is we're going to have three endpoints in this call. We're going to have the user who initiated the call, we're going to have the call center agent that are going to be speaking to, and then our WebSocket endpoint is going to be the third person in our conference here. So user calls, we connect them to our LVN, or sorry, user calls our MVN, we connect them to a conference, and then we kick off two outbound calls. So the first outbound call is going to be to our agent, and the second outbound call is going to be to our WebSocket. And it's that WebSocket then that's going to be communicating with the speech-to-text service from IBM Watson. So it's going to be sending the audio input from the conference to IBM Watson, and it's going to be receiving the transcript back. And then once it receives the transcript back, then it's going to be sending that transcript off again back to Watson to do the tone analysis. So we're going to get like kind of, our, whether they're angry, sad, etc. And then from that tone analysis, we're going to initiate another WebSocket to our agent's browser, and that's going to display to them in real time what emotions the customer is currently feeling. So that's kind of the overview of what we're going to be building. I know it sounds quite complicated, but once we actually get into it, you see it's fairly straightforward. So let's just make a start on the actual code then. So I've just created like a empty folder. It has a Python 3.6.2, I think. Let's just double check that. Yeah, Python 3.6.2 virtual environment setup. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install some of the kind of packages that we're going to be using for this. So there's quite a few that we're going to need. So we're obviously going to need Nexmo for our Python client library. Now, even if you're not a Python developer, don't worry too much. There's none of what I'm doing here which is unique to Python. It just so happens that's one of the languages I'm most familiar with, so that's what I've chosen to use today. This would also be well suited for the likes of JavaScript with Node.js, because we've got a lot of WebSockets going on here. We also have obviously clients for PHP. We've got clients for .NET. the Nexmo GitHub, you can see there the different client libraries that we have. So really, it doesn't matter what kind of programming language you prefer to work in, you should be able to find hopefully one of our libraries that will work for you. Or behind the scenes, it's actually just a really straightforward REST API. They're very, very thin wrappers, these clients. So even if we don't support your preferred language, as long as you can make a HTTP request with whatever programming language you like, you can still use our REST APIs. So we're going to install our Nexmo client library for Python. We're going to need as well the Watson developer cloud package. For our servers, we're actually going to have two. We're going to have one server which is responsible for serving up our NCCOs, which is our Nexmo call control objects. That's the thing that's going to tell whenever somebody phones our long virtual number, that's going to how we're going to tell Nexmo what to do. So it's how we're going to tell it to create the conference. It's how we're going to tell it whenever we initiate these calls out to the WebSockets to connect those to the conference, etc. And so we're going to use Hug for that. It's a little Python framework that makes it really easy to create kind of APIs. For our WebSockets, we're going to use Tornado just because it makes working with WebSockets really easy. And then just a couple of kind of extra ones. So log0, just so we can start putting stuff out into our terminal, and fleck8 to make sure it catches any linting errors as I'm working. So let's go install those. So while I was doing that, if we go to our editor, so I've just created, it's just an empty folder at the moment, there's nothing really in there. But the first thing we need to do is actually set up our Nexmo application. So right now it's finished installing everything, that's good. So with Nexmo, in order to do voice calls, so we're going to be making two kind of outbound calls here. We're going to be making a call to our agent to proxy the call from our user, and we're going to make the call out to this WebSocket endpoint. So in order to use our voice APIs, we're going to need to create a voice application. Now, you can do this through the Nexmo dashboard. We also have a CLI, which is just like a command line interface that allows you to do all this kind of stuff. I'm just going to use the Nexmo CLI because it keeps it nice and kind of compact to my terminal. So the first thing I want to do is I need a number. I need a long virtual number for people to call. So let's just do a number search. And I want it to be in the UK because that's where I am. It needs to support voice. And yeah, that'll do. Let's have a look and see what numbers we have available. Okay, so now we get to get a list back of kind of numbers matching my request. I'm just going to pick, doesn't really matter, the last one here. So these are all virtual numbers that are available to rent at the moment. So I need to purchase one of these. So I'm going to go Nexmo number buy and tell which number I want to buy. It's obviously going to charge my account, so it's going to ask me to confirm that. Yeah, I'm happy for you to charge my account. Great, so I've now got my number purchased. Now the next thing that I need to do is then create a voice application. So a voice application kind of stores some configuration around what I'm about to do. So it'll have things like the URL to call whenever somebody answers the call, whether it's inbound or outbound, and that's going to be serving up this Nexmo call control object. It's going to need an event URL. So the event URL is essentially whenever something happens on the call, this is the webhook where we send the notifications to. So whenever it starts ringing, or it's answered, or it's completed, or it failed, or whatever other events occur on the call, we'll hit this endpoint and notify you of it. So that's your event URL. And the final thing is the voice API is actually secured using JSON Web Tokens. So that's how you authenticate with it. And for those, you need a public-private key pair. So as part of this, I'm going to generate a new public-private key pair and store my private key locally here. So it'll be Nexmo app create. I need to give it a name, so I'm just going to go like live coding sentiment. And then I need to give kind of like the answer URL and the event URL. So because I'm going to be developing this all locally, but Nexmo still needs to be able to access my server in order to get these Nexmo call control objects. I'm going to need to have a way to publish my local development environment on the public web. So about this, we use ngrok quite a lot for it. Explain ngrok, it's the first link there, and it'll take you through kind of like how to set up a SSH tunnel to your local dev environment using ngrok, which is what I'm going to do today. So I actually already have this kind of configured for it, so I'm not quite sure what the name is. I think it might just be like sentiment. There we go. So we can see it's telling me here's my kind of URL for it. Let's just grab that. So that's going to be my answer URL, and then my event URL is just going to be that with events on the end, say. And then I needed to generate my key file for me. So I'm just going to go like key file and where I want to store that. So I'm just going to store it as private key. So let's give that a go. Okay, so that's created a new Nexmo application. It's set the answer and the events URL for me, and it's also generated a private public key pair, and the public key will be stored against that application in my Nexmo account, and the private key, if we do an ls now, we can see that's actually been written to disk for me, so I'll need that later. Now, the next thing I need to do is just link these two things together. So I'm going to just go Nexmo link app, and let's just link the number that I've just purchased with this app ID. So there we go. Okay, great. So now whenever I call that a virtual number, it's going to know that it's this app that it needs to execute. So it's going to know then that it needs to grab this URL and query it. It'll do a GET request, that URL, to get the NCCO, to get the Nexmo call control object, to know what to do with any calls that come in to that number. So now we've got a kind of setup where it's going to ask for NCCO. We need to actually write our NCCO for this. So let's just create a new file in our editor. So we're just going to add one here. We'll call it just call objects keep it simple. So for our call objects, we're going to be using, as I said, we're going to be using Hug for this. So that's the first thing we'll probably need to import. So let's bring in Hug, and let's just create a new class to keep this all nice and kind of tidy. So it's going to be like call object server. And so the first thing we're going to want to do then is create an endpoint for the start of this whole process. You know, this is the one whenever our user calls and what it should do at that point. So let's just call it start. It's going to take reference itself, nothing else. And all it's going to do is just return our our NCCO. So in Hug, if you just return a regular Python object, it's going to convert that into a JSON endpoint for us. So it's really nice and simple. All the Nexmo call control objects are all JSON. They need to be served with the correct MIME type, and they're essentially just a list of actions. So I've got my list created here. Let's just specify my first action. So whenever somebody calls, because we're going to be putting them into a conference, and we're going to have to wait until the agent is available to speak to them. Let's let them know that, because there may be like a couple of minutes while they're waiting for an agent to be free. So please wait while we connect you. So it's going to use our kind of text to speech and a synthesized voice to play that message to the user when they first call. Next thing we want to do then is actually create our conversation, create our kind of conference call. So it's going to be conversation. We need to give our conversation a name so that whenever we're referencing it later and we're adding other kind of callers to it, that we know which conversation to add them to. So this needs to be unique to your account. So let's just do self.conversation name. It's not going to be defined yet, but what we'll do is then let's create a net function so self. And what we'll just do then is whenever this is initialized, we'll generate a conversation name. So we'll do like self dot conversation name, and what we'll, let's just use a UUID for it and make it nice and easy for us. So let's just import that as well now before we forget. Okay, so we're just going to generate like a unique identifier for this as a conversation name. We'll have that in here. What we'll also want to do is now you've got two kind of users on a conference. You have attendees and you have moderators. So that's if you're having a moderated conference. So at the moment, whenever this action gets executed, it'll start the conference straight away. So the user will just be in there by themselves, and there'll be no feedback to let them know that they're waiting on anybody, or there's no hold music or anything like that. It'll just be kind of dead air essentially. So we don't really want that. So we're gonna say that our start on enter is going to be false, and then we're going to, let's play this some hold music. So we'll go like music on hold URL, I think it is, and that's just going to be a list, and then I'm just going to grab my URL for this. So we've got our, we know everything's getting served through ngrok, so that's our ngrok URL. I'm just going to play like hold.mp3. So for the hold music, there's actually a really great site called Bensound that does kind of royalty-free music. All it just needs is kind of, it's Creative Commons attribution. So I'm just going to like use one of those. So I've got one previously that I can just grab here. So that's going to be in my projects. I think it's instead of Watson, it's going to be Bensound. There we go. So let's just move that into here. So we have the MP3 locally here. We need to serve it up though as this hold.mp3. With Hug, we can actually create kind of static endpoints as well. So I'm just going to do that. All it's going to do is just read the contents of that MP3 file out and play it back. So you can see you're just opening that MP3. It knows it's a binary file, and it's just going to serve that out for us. So that's fine. So whenever the person connects, it's going to create this conversation, so a conference call, and then it's going to play this hold music for them, which is exactly what we want. So that's our endpoints created. Now just to configure our actual server. So we're going to go like server equals, and what did we call it? Like call object server, and then we're going to create a new Hug router. So router equals hug.root.api. I'm just going to pass in file. That's fine. And then, so the first thing we're going to do is like at our kind of roots, then we're going to serve up our server start. So we've got server dot start. So that's this endpoint that we create here. So we're saying like if we have a GET request at the document root, then execute this method. So that's fine. The other one we need is for our hold music. It's going to be a GET request as well. What did we call it? We called it like hold.mp3. It needs to be in quotes. And then for that one, then we're going to use our server.static. Now, because this is actually a file and not a piece of JSON that we're serving back, we're going to need to change the output. So we'll do output equals hug.output format, and it's going to be a file. So if we look at this now, we can see kind of like, why is this highlighting? Oh, because it's 2 long lines. There we go. Keep me right, flick it. So we can see here we've got kind of our 2 endpoints started now. If we go into here and we actually run it, so hug-f and we can call objects. So we have hug is started with the cutest little terminal logo ever. If we grab our ngrok URL and look at that in our browser now, we can see, hopefully. So there we go. For some reason, it thinks it's in French, but we can see our JSON file is coming back. And we can see here that we've got like our first action, which is the talk. We've got second action, which is creating this conversation. And if we do our holds.mp3, we can see we've got some nice hold music for them as well. So that's our first couple of endpoints all set up. So we need to create a couple other ones for our different types of people that are going to be joining us. So we have moderators and attendees. So I'm going to not make you watch me type out the entirety of those. Now we've kind of got the basics of it. So I'm just going to put these in here. So what these mean, so the attendee is exactly the same as what we had before. It's just missing that talk action at the start. This is actually going to be for our WebSocket. So whenever the WebSocket connects to our conversation, we don't want it to start either. So we're going to give it the start and enter false as well. We're going to give it the same hold music to make sure it plays for our actual user, but it won't trigger the start of the conference. And then our moderator is going to be our actual call center agent. And whenever they connect, it's going to start recording the call, and they don't have this start and enter false. So it's going to default to true. It's going to start the conference. And we're also telling it whenever our moderator leaves to exit. So that'll hang up for our user as well. So it's going to end the conference on exit. Now, because we actually have a WebSocket event coming through, we need to manually cancel that, but I'll show that in a second. So if we have a look now, we can save these. We'll need to create our routes for them as well. So let's just add them in here. So it's very much the same. We've got a get moderator, get attendee, and if we go have a look at one of these in the browser, it's exactly the same as what we were seeing before. It's just different NCCO being returned now. So the next thing really we want to do then is actually start initiating these calls. So the first thing we're going to have to do whenever a user connects is connect them to our call center agent. So we're going to need to initiate a voice call out to the agent, and then whenever they pick up the phone, we're going to tell them to use this NCCO, which is going to tell them to join this conversation. So we're actually going to phone them, and then once they pick up, we're going to connect them to the conference that's in progress. So in order to create a call, we're going to use that Nexmo client that we installed. So we're going to need to import that as well. So let's just import Nexmo. We'll just do it in this same start method. Well, we're going to need to actually use the client a couple of times. So let's just create a client up here first. So we'll do self.nexmo client equals, let's do Nexmo client, and then it takes a couple of things for off. So we're going to need the application ID for the application that we want to use. So that's the thing that we created down here. So we can see there's our application ID. So we're going to put that in. And then it's also going to need our private key. So that was the one that we generated whenever we created our application. So we're just going to put this in as private key. There we go. So that's going to create our Nexmo client whenever this is instantiated. So we can just access it in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to create this call. So the Nexmo create call stuff for number to number is pretty straightforward. So we have our Nexmo client, we've got a create call, and then we've just got this object we're passing in, which has some kind of information. So who we're calling, or sorry, who we're going to be calling, where we're calling from, and then we can specify the answer URL. So that's our moderator one, because this is going to be for our agent. So the two, I've got this test handset here, which we should see ring in a second, hopefully. And our from is going to be the number that we just purchased, because the from needs to be a Nexmo virtual number. So we're going to use this one. We'll pop that in there. And if we save that now, what's going to happen is whenever we initiate this call, it's going to start another call out to our agent. And then it's going to continue on, and it's going to create this conference, etc. So we're actually, so we need to import OS. So there's, I've just stored some of the variables that I'm going to need for today's kind of live coding session in my environment. So the test handset is just a mobile number. It's just a number for this handset here. So it's just getting lifted out of my local environmental variable. So if we actually try this now, so we're going to be calling this virtual number. So let's just go to 038973474, and hopefully we should see this ring. Okay, so I'm hearing the please will we connect you, and we can see now that this call is coming in here from that virtual number. So I'm just going to actually dismiss this on both. There we go. So whenever I called that number, I heard this please will we connect you, and it played the hold music for me, and then I saw kind of the call appear in here. So I didn't want to answer it because you get this weird echoey thing, because both hands are sitting on my desk at the moment. But let's add it in our second call in. So the next call we need to do is out to the WebSocket. So it's slightly different. It's still going to use the Nexmo client. We're still going to be just creating a call. One thing we are going to do is we're just creating it. We don't care about that call because it's going to be terminated whenever the agent hangs up. But for the WebSocket, we're going to need to terminate that ourselves. So let's just create a variable to store our WebSocket call. And then we can actually create the call itself. So we're just going to do that after we've initiated the call out to our agent. So we've got this, our WebSocket call is just another create call on the Nexmo client, but our to is slightly different this time. So before our type was just phone, now our type is WebSocket. We have this WebSocket URL, which is another ngrok URL, which I will set up in just a moment. You can see me doing that just next. We're setting the content type as being this audio stream, and then we're going to put our from number. So let's actually change that to the CM LVN that we've just purchased, and then once that WebSocket answers the call, we're going to tell it to fetch this Nexmo call control object, which is our attendee one. Which will tell attention to that same conversation, but not to start it. So it'll join, but the hold music will still play until our agent joins as well. So we can save that up. Now, at the moment, it's not going to do anything because we don't actually have this WebSocket created. So that's probably what we should look to do next. So we're going to just, let's create a new file for this. So we'll just call it, well, I think probably WS server makes sense. And this is going to be using Tornado. So this is what we're going to be serving our WebSockets and stuff from. So there's actually quite a lot of imports that we need for Tornado and things. So I'm just going to bring these across. You don't need to watch me type out all the imports. And then we're going to create a handler for this. So let's create our class, and we're just going to call it audio handler. And it's going to be a Tornado, it's going to be a WebSocket, and it's going to be a WebSocket handler. So there we go. So this is going to be what holds kind of all the functions around our WebSocket stuff. So with the WebSockets in Tornado, there's things like we have, on an open, which will, as it sounds like, whenever the WebSocket connection opens. We also have like on message, which is whenever we receive any new information on the WebSocket. So essentially, whenever we receive that new information, we want to forward it onto the transcriber service at IBM Watson. And then we have like our on close, which again, as it sounds, it's just like whenever the connection's closed. So whenever we close the connection, our audio connection is closed, we're also going to want to close that transcriber connection to Watson. Now, I'm not going to like go through this too much in detail because we actually have a tutorial on doing the transcription with Watson. And we'll run through it kind of as an overview as well, don't worry, but for kind of a lot more in-depth about it, if you check out the Nexmo.com blog, one of my colleagues, one of the other developer advocates, has recently published one on doing real-time call transcription. It's also using Python, it's also using Tornado, so a lot of what I'm going to be doing here, you'll see has really actually been lifted nearly wholeheartedly from Sam's great blog post. So have a read through that. It'll go through things like kind of what you're actually getting back from the transcription service. I'm not going to cover that. I'll cover sending information to it and just the bits that we need for the tone analyzing. But if you're interested in the transcription and things like kind of the different responses you're going to get from there, I highly recommend reading Sam's blog post as well. But with that said, let's kind of skip on. So the first thing we're going to want to do is whenever the audio socket is opened, is we're going to then create our connection, our WebSocket connection out to IBM Watson. So let's just say, so we're actually going to leave in like our open handler. So whenever a connection is opened, we're going to create a new WebSocket connection. So in order to do that, we have this little bit here. So what I'm doing here is I'm saying I'm creating this transcriber on our class, which is actually going to create another WebSocket connection. So we have kind of the inbound one into the audio handler, and now we're going to create one out to IBM Watson. So I'm setting it for English UK because that's where I'm based. They have a whole bunch of different models. Again, Sam's post will go through that kind of stuff. And then what we're saying is whenever there is new messages on this WebSocket, to call this function. So we'll write this function in a second. And that's where we'll get back our text stream that we can pass into the Tone Analyzer service. So the other thing we have here as well is this transcriber token. So I'm just going to bring this across. So this is just how you authenticate with the IBM Watson service. So for anybody who hasn't used it before, IBM Watson, you can obviously get set up for free on their kind of Bluemix stuff. Once you create your account and log in, you've got kind of your dashboard where you can pick through all their different kind of products and services. The great thing is for trying this kind of stuff out is once you've kind of registered, you can get some free credit to use as well. So the Tone Analyzer service that I'm going to be using, it's actually one of their light services, so it has like a free tier. I think it's something like 2,000 requests. The speech to text isn't. But whenever you register, I think I got something like $200 kind of credit to play with the service. So that should be plenty just kind of to get started on it anyway. So with the IBM Watson stuff then, to authenticate to it, we create this token using their authorization service. So I've already kind of stored my transcriber username and transcriber password in my environment. That's going to use the requests library to issue a GET request to their authentication service, and then it's going to return this token, which I can then use to do in my WebSocket to authenticate myself with them. So we've got kind of whenever our audio one is opened, we're going to create this connection, we're going to authenticate against it, and then we've just got to do our on transcriber message as well. So on our transcriber message, this is really kind of where we're going to start doing our tone analyzer stuff. So I'm just going to put a placeholder in for this at the moment. So we're going to go on transcriber message. It's going to receive message, funnily enough. And for the time being, we're not going to really do anything with that. Let's just log it. So we'll just put that in as like debug of message. And what we'll also do is, let's just say whenever this opens, let's put some log in here as well. So we're going to put an info in there that our audio socket handler is open. And then we're going to want to have our on close as well. So with the on close, we wanted to also close out our WebSocket connection to Watson. So we'll just do, audio socket close, and we'll make that an info rather than a warning. You can see here we've got this, we're yielding our self-transcriber, which is the WebSocket connection we're creating up here. We're creating this object, which has got an action of stop, and then we're writing that object to our WebSocket connection, and then we're just going to close it. So what this is doing then is it's actually writing to our connection to the IBM Watson transcriber service, the speech to text. So whenever our audio one, so this is the one that's getting the audio data from our voice call, whenever that closes, then we're also going to close out our connection to IBM's Watson transcription service. So we're just kind of tidying up after ourselves. So that's the first bits we need. We're also going to have, like, obviously our on message. So we've got our on transcriber message, which is going to fire whenever we get anything back from IBM Watson. But we also want to do something with the actual messages that are coming into our main services. So whenever gen coroutine, and this is then going to be on message, pretty much exactly the same for now anyway. So this is actually going to be a lot of binary data coming through. So we could just log it out, but at the time being we're just going to pass on it because we don't want to fill our stream or our terminal full of binary data. So let's just pass on that. And that's our WebSockets connection basically set up. So now we can just actually, we'll need to have set up our Tornado applications. We're going to go like, if we're calling this on the terminal, so if name equals main. First thing we're going to need to do is create our application, which is going to be a Tornado web application. I think that's the correct Tornado web application. Yeah. And that takes just a list of what our handlers and endpoints are going to be. So we're going to have, what do we call this? We called this audio, didn't we? So we've got audio, and that's going to use our audio handler we've just written. So let's add that in. And then we're going to need to set up kind of our ports to listen on and stuff like that. It's not interesting, so we'll just paste it across. So we can see here then that we've got our application, which has got one endpoint, which is this audio, which is going to call our audio handler, which whenever it opens is going to create our connection to this transcriber service. And at the minute, it's not going to do anything. We're just passing on our messages. We're not going to get anything back from the transcriber service either because we're not sending anything to it to get anything back. But we can at least see that this is kind of running because we should get our audio socket handler is open whenever we connect to it. So we're going to need another, so this is running our hug in here, and we've got our terminal for ngrok for hug as well, but we're going to need another terminal just for, so that's running our live coding sentiment. So let's just go into that same folder, and we're going to tell it that's what we're working on as well. And if I just do a pip freeze, just to double check, yeah, there's all our requirements are on there. That's great. So when I look at this now, we've got our WS server. Let's just save that up, and I should be able to do like Python WS server to run it. Or I may have got a spelling mistake. Where have I made that spelling mistake? There we go. That's why it wasn't auto-completing properly. And run that again. Okay, so we're not outputting anything yet, so that's fine. What we'll want to do then is let's make sure our hug is running again, and we have our call which gets placed, which connects to that WebSocket. We need to set up this ngrok URL as well. So let's just create a new one for our ngrok. You probably, if you're doing this, you probably want to run it in like tmux or screen or something like that, rather than having lots of terminal windows like I have. But we'll just do this for now. So our ngrok start. What was it before? It was like sentiment sockets, maybe. No. So what have we got here? Sentiment WS. There we go. So ngrok start WS. Okay, so we've now started another ngrok session. This one's got a slightly different URL. It's also pointing at different ports, pointing at point 3000, which is what our server's running on. Our hug server is going to run 8000, so that's going to be this one. So we can now make our call, hopefully, and we should see kind of our request coming through in here and on hug, and then we should see it opens that connection. So let's just try calling that number again. So we can see kind of the different requests are coming through here, and we can see that our audio socket handler is opened, and we've got our call coming through on our agent's phone as well. So let's just dismiss all of these. Okay, so we can see here we had like kind of our audio socket handler opened, and we can see different requests come through. So we have lots of requests for this event that we have not defined yet, so they're all 404ing. We can see here that we had a request for the root NCCO, which was our user that first call initiated. We can see kind of like we have ones for our hold music, and we've got smart people on the phone here trying it out as well. You can download the code later and give it a go, don't worry. But the problem that we're going to run into is that our WebSockets are not closing, as you've noticed. So our audio WebSocket handler opened. It opened a connection to our transcriber service, but didn't close either because this onClose didn't get called. We didn't see this logger info. And the reason for that is, well, we have set so that our whenever our moderator leaves, that it exits the call, it's not going to close that WebSocket connection. So we're going to have to close that WebSocket connection ourselves. Now to do that, we're actually going to use the event system. So all these events you can see here, that's 404ing at the minute because we don't have an events endpoint. We actually are going to set up an events endpoint for that, which is going to close out that WebSocket call. So remember, whenever we created it here, we actually stored it against our conversation. Well, now we can actually use that to close it. So we're just going to go, let's just bring this across. And we're going to put this in as an endpoint. So whenever if we have an event with a status that's completed and we have created a WebSocket call, then we're just going to update the call and tell it to hang up. And that'll trigger the closing of that WebSocket. So now we have kind of everything set up where we're getting our audio through, we're passing it through to get transcribed. We now need to actually pass that information across. So that's where kind of our on message comes in the previous one. So let's just bring this in. So we have on our server, we were just passing here, but we're going to put this in now. So what this is going to do is whenever it receives a message, first of all, it's going to check to see if it's not a string. So if it's a binary message, then we know it's part of our audio data, and we're going to just send that straight through. I'm just going to proxy it to the transcriber service. Now, if I don't need that log in there. If it's not binary data, so it's a string, well, the very first message that we're going to get when the WebSocket opens is our kind of a JSON header to tell us kind of what the different, well, the things that we set up in the previous one in our call objects. This stuff, essentially, what our content type is, etc. So we need to pass that along to the transcriber service. So we're going to do that here. And we're going to add in a couple other things to tell it that we want continuous and that we want interim results, so we get things quicker. And we're going to start our action as well. So that's anytime anything comes in our audio WebSocket, it's going to get proxied straight through to the transcriber. And then whenever messages come back from the transcriber is where we get to use our tone analyzer. So this is the bit then that actually starts to get kind of interesting. So if we put this in here, we'll just log the message as well, why not? So we're going if we have a message, it's going to be a JSON string, so we're just going to load it in. And then if it has results within that message, which is, again, you can look at Sam's blog post about transcription to get more information on this. We're just going to grab the first transcript that we can get, and we're going to pass that into the tone analyzer. So we haven't actually created this tone analyzer yet, so we probably should do that as well. So the tone analyzer, then we can just do it in our open request. It's part of the Watson kind of library. Really straightforward. We're just going to go, we've imported that up here from their Watson Developer Cloud, and we're just saying, let's create a new tone analyzer. Here's my username. Here's my password for it. Which version of it I want to use, and then we're just assigning that to self.tone analyzer so we can use it further down here. So we have here our call out to self.tone analyzer. and we're passing in our transcript that's coming back from IBM Watson, and then the results of that then is going to be the different tones. So it's going to give us a score for fear and joy and disgust and everything that we talked about earlier. So once we have those, we need to then start sending them to the user's browser. So this actually, I'm just going to start this for a second, and we should hopefully start to see some debug messages come through. I'll just restart this server here. So if I give this a call, it's probably not going to work very well because it's going to be really echoey because the two phones are next to each other. But I should start to see some information coming through in a second. So we can see the states come back as listening. I'm going to answer that call. So here we go. So now we can start to see all the kind of transcriptions that are coming back. It's not going to be very accurate because of my weird Irish accent, and also because it's got a really bad echo because the two phones are sitting right next to each other. But you can see that we've got this kind of like transcript that's coming back with all the text and the confidence levels for it, which unfortunately are not very high because of the echo and things. But whenever I've tried it previously without the echo, and it works a lot better. Okay, so we're going to exit that. And what we should see then is kind of still got results and things coming through, which is great. But we need to like look at this kind of tones as well. So once we have our tones, we need to be able to send them to the user's browser. And to do that, we're going to use another WebSocket. So this, we have our kind of our WebSocket here for the audio handler. We're going to need a separate one for the dashboard. So we're just going to create exactly the same kind of thing as what we did before. Let's just have a look. And we'll create a new dashboard handler this time. One thing that's going to be slightly different is we're going to create this thing called waiters. Now, with this handler, we actually could have multiple connections coming in at the same time. So we're going to need to store them somewhere. We don't care what the URL is that's coming through on, so we're going to just set our check origin, which is a thing in Tornado to make sure it's like a security measure. For this, I'm just going to say like it can be from anywhere. You probably want to do a proper origin check, but we're just going to return true. It doesn't matter where it's being connected from. And then we're going to, whenever this connection opens, we're going to add it to this pool. So we're going to basically add a copy of our WebSocket into this pool, ready to be written to. And the reason for that then is, well, actually, I need to put it on close as well. And what that's going to do then is whenever somebody closes, it's going to remove that instance from our pool, so we don't have ones running about that we don't need anymore. And the reason for that is that we can update multiple ones at once. So we're not going to have an on message here. Instead, we're just going to create a class method that can call from anywhere. And what it's going to do then is, well, let's just change these to info so don't even warnings. And what it's going to do is whenever somebody calls us send updates, it's going to log some information about them, but then it's going to go through each of our waiters here, and it's going to write that message, which is going to be our list of tones underscores. So now we have that, we can actually bring it into the on message stuff we looked at earlier. So back down here, so we've got our message, we're loading it, we've got our transcription, we've got our tones are going to analyze. So let's actually send that updates. We've got our dashboard handler, we're going to send updates, and we're just, I know this is going to be a Python object, I'm going to convert it into a JSON string to write it, and that's then going to be sent out to any clients that are connected to our WebSocket endpoint. So we need to add this into our server as well. So we'll just create a new endpoint for that here. Let's just call it dashboard. Just keep things simple. And we've got our dashboard handler. Exactly the same as what we did before. So now we've got two different kind of endpoints, two different handlers. And this one's, all it's going to do is whenever somebody connects to it, if there's a new message comes back from our transcribers, or sorry, from our Tone Analyzer service, it's going to get pushed out to any clients that are connected to this dashboard handler. So we've now got a situation where we can actually start getting information to the call center agent. You know, we've got the transcript of the call, which is being sent to the tone analyzer, which is returning the tone information that we need with the scoring per tone. And now we can start looking to push that out so that the call center agent can see it. So we're just going to create a really simple pen. And what we need to do is have some kind of graph or some easy way for them to kind of see this. So let's just create a new pen here. And there is actually a really handy library for doing these kind of stuff. I think it's called Smoothie. There we go. I'm pretty sure that's the one. So we're going to add that in. This just helps generate time series graph. Have a look. Smoothie charts. There we go. And we can see it does these kind of lovely time series graphs, which we're going to use and to plot the different emotions on. So we've got our smoothies included. We're going to need to really basic HTML here. We're just going to create a canvas for it to draw the graph onto. So it's going to be like, you know, canvas. We're going to give it just an ID of my canvas. What width? Let's make it nice and big. We're going to go 900s and give it a height of 3. And we can just close that off then. Okay, so that's going to create our canvas here. We're not going to add any additional CSS. We can get rid of that. And then we're going to do our JS for it. So the first thing we're going to need to do is create our smoothie graph. So we pop that in here. So we can see we've got this reference to smoothie. We're creating a new smoothie chart. We've specified a min and max of 1 and 0 because I know that the values that come back from the tone analyzer service are between 1 and 0. So we're going to have this kind of fixed axis for it. And then this 3000 is actually a delay. So there will be a 3-second buffer on any results coming back. And that's just really to allow the graph to be a lot smoother rather than jumping about so much. So we're going to create our connection to our WebSocket. You know, so here's our WebSocket connection to that dashboard endpoint we just created. We're going to create then our actual data series. So we have 6 or 5 different kind of emotions. You know, we've got anger, disgust, fear, sadness, and joy, and each one of these is going to be a new time series. So that allows us to, we can put the time that the event occurred and what the score was between 0 and 1. This stroke and fill is just going to give us some nice colors so we can differentiate the lines from each other. So anger is going to be a red, disgust an orange, fear yellow, sadness blue, and joy purpley pink. So now we have kind of our series set up. We're going to need to add those series to our smoothie graph. So we're saying here, you know, for tone series and series, do we know if that is the right pluralization, but it'll do for now. So we're going to iterate over this object, and we're going to go, you know, add a new time series. We're going to put in the actual time series as the first argument, and then it's just got this object, which is really setting some styles here. So we're going to go that the stroke style should be this color, that the fill style should be that color, and they're all going to have a line width of 2. So now those are all added. You see, we're still not getting anything in here because, well, we don't have any data yet. So let's just tell it what to do whenever we receive some data. So we have our WebSocket connection, but we're not doing anything with it. So we need to add this event handler. So with this, we're saying, like, on this WebSocket, whenever there's a new message received, which is going to be passed in as this EVT, we know it's a JSON string because that's what we kind of specified here. Whenever we write it out, we know we've got our JSON dumps. So this is going to be a JSON string. We're going to convert that back into a JavaScript object, and then we're going to iterate over each tone in it. And we're just going to log out what we've got back, but then we're also going to access the series based upon the tone ID, which is going to be, you know, anger, disgust, fear, etc. And then we're going to this new time series, we're going to append the current time and the score that we received back. So that should all be kind of connected now. In fact, if we go look at our server here, Oh, we're getting a 404 in our dashboard. So let's go have a look and see why we're getting a 404 in our dashboard. So because we haven't restarted our server. So we try restarting that. Let's restart this by making a change. And we have a look. We can see our dashboard socket is now opened. So we have this connection through to the dashboard socket. Now we kind of want to see this in action. The only issue being that with that echo I'm getting, it's really difficult for you to kind of see it properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just take out the call to the agent. Let's just remove that. So it's not, you're not going to see it appear here anymore, I'm sorry. And then we're going to tell our WebSocket to actually use the moderator. So it should actually begin the conference as soon as it connects. So we should only, now we just have the users getting connected directly, or whenever I call them, I'm going to be connected directly to WebSocket. I shouldn't hopefully get that horrendous echo, but we should still have kind of our connection and things here. Dashboard socket's still open, that's great. I'm just going to refresh that to make sure. I'm just going to give it a call, and hopefully we should see kind of the output here of our audit socket handler, and now our transcribers listening as well. So as I kind of start to say things, we can see kind of the transcribing coming back. We can see our updates are coming through here, and I can see it starting to appear on my graph. So as I'm talking, you know, we're seeing at the minute it's lots of joy and happiness and things. So the pink is really high because I'm saying lots of lovely words that make it think that I'm very happy and that my tone is really kind of joyous and pleasant and etc. But we have kind of, you can see some of the scores going through. I'm just going to hang up this call. And we can see here kind of, oh, wait, no speech detected. It's because I was playing audio for me as well. Oh, I know what it will be. So what we're going to do then is let's just try this one more time. We're going to specify our true here, and we're going to take that hold music out because it was very distracting for me. And we'll give this another call. So we're just going to restart that server as well. And we're going to restart this. So let's refresh. And that's how one last call to see what kind of input we get. So again, it's gone straight through to tell me wait to connect. We can see the dashboard socket is opened, the audio socket is opened, our transcribers listening. We're starting to get some text back from it. We're starting to get kind of scores for our different tones as well. They're all coming through. And as we see, if we start looking at the graph, I can see that stuff as well. Let's actually just open the console here. Okay, I'm not very good at opening the console one hand while holding my phone with the other one apparently. So where is it? Oh, I can provide it from here. Inspect, and we've got our console, and we can see the different objects are coming back, and we can see kind of like, you know, what tone it is. There's the tone ID. There's kind of the scores for it. So at the minute, it's all fairly even because I'm just talking kind of normally. I'm not like overly happy or joyed or, you know, this is fantastic. It's amazing to see this graph go through in real time. And hopefully in about 3 or 5 seconds now, you can see that that pink line is going to start scooting way, way up as I'm using all these happy and fun words. But you can see it is kind of, there is a little bit of buffer time, that kind of 3 seconds to allow the graph to be a lot smoother, but it does tend to react fairly quickly to what I'm saying. So that's kind of it for this demo, folks. There will be an email going around. It'll have a link to a video of this. I know some parts of it were quite quick going through there. There'll be a link to the video so you can kind of watch at your own pace. I'll also be publishing this code on our GitHub account. So we have our community GitHub is filling up at Nexmo Community. I'll be publishing that on there later today. So you can go through it kind of at your leisure. I think we're also running we're doing another live coding session later on. So if you think there's somebody else in your organization who may be interested in this, please let them know. Links to register for it. Our Twitter account, which if you're not following yet, I highly recommend it. It's Nexmo Dev. Yeah, have a look on there. There should be kind of links to our to register for any of these live coding events. There'll also be links to kind of the blog posts, such as the one that I talked about that Sam had written, and be down here somewhere. There we go, our call transcription one. But yeah, so that's kind of it for me. So I'm just going to have a look here and see if we have any questions. So if you have any questions, you've got just a couple of minutes to pop them into the kind of GoToWebinar. We've had one come through so far saying, does it work in another language like Spanish or French? So that was the kind of transcriber things I was talking about earlier. The transcriber does have this these models where you can specify kind of which language you want to use it for, and that's going to do the conversion. I'm not sure. It says 7 languages in real time. I'm not sure which ones those are. For the actual tone analyzer itself, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. We need to really kind of check the documentation and things. I've only looked at it for kind of UK and US English at the moment, but it probably will say in here somewhere. I just don't know off the top of my head. I'm afraid I would need to go look it up for you. Got any other questions? Can you also use with the Google AI platform? Yes, I'm not familiar with the Google AI platform myself, but as long as you can kind of, if it's got an ability to take kind of data coming in from the WebSockets, or if it takes kind of like a text feed, like a text transcription, there's no reason I can think why you wouldn't be able to take kind of that data stream and pass it off really to any service. Obviously, you may need to do some transformations on it depending upon what kind of data they're expecting on their API. We're quite lucky with the IBM Watson that we can really just proxy that WebSocket data directly to them as just binary data. For other services, they may have different requirements on their APIs. You may need to do some transformation of the data as you're kind of proxying it through. But yeah, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to use it with other services. Okay, so I think that was the last question. So yeah, that's kind of it for today's live coding session. As I said, we'll send around all the details, different links and things that I've talked about today as well, for anybody who wants to give it a go themselves or to get more information about it. Also, please do, if you do know anybody in your organization who could benefit from my next live coding session, which is later on today, please do let them know. There's still time to sign up for that. So great, thank you very much already for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.